All right, let's talk some winners. How about an optimistic video? You know I like to give my hot takes here, but this is going to be an optimistic video. The 7 winners of the offseason so far, because there still is some offseason left, but 7 winners so far. 2 honorable mentions to get to. The Texans are an honorable mention. I did not like the Will Anderson trade. I actually actively hated that trade. I don't hate getting the player. I think he's a good player, but I think they gave up way too much for that selection. I mean, they basically gave up, 2 first and a third, maybe even a second involved as well. I'm trying to remember the exact details, but one of those first was pick number 12. Another one is the Texans' first-round pick next year. That is a brutal first-round pick to give up. That could be a top 5 pick potentially. So because of that, I really did not love that trade, and that's why they're not on the list. But I think he'll be very good. I really like a couple of other moves, like getting like I think like Jimmy Ward and Dalton Schultz both should be good. And C.J. Stroud was my number 1 quarterback in the draft. So getting him, to me, is enough to put them in a winner's honorable mention, but not quite winners. The Seahawks I also put as honorable mentions, as I like their draft a lot. I really like the Jackson Smith and Jigba and Devin Witherspoon. I think will both be very good. I didn't love the Draymond Jones signing either, but I thought they had a good offseason, but not quite the top 7, so they're honorable mentions. Let's get into the actual list now. Number 7 is one that I don't have a ton to talk about, but I really like this offseason. For one thing, I'm factoring in the Vic Fangio addition, who I think could help a ton defensively, as that defense has talent, but did not look great last year. Hopefully, I think this is going to be great for Xavier Howard, and adding Jalen Ramsey and Cam Smith, too, who they drafted. This could be an elite defense, and if they could have an elite defense with that offense, and if Tua is healthy, Mike White should at least be a solid backup. I love that signing, but, it should be fine. As long as Tua is healthy, this team could be championship contenders. So, yeah, loved this offseason. Didn't have a ton they could do, but they made the most of what they could do. So, great offseason, in my opinion. Number 6, the Dallas Cowboys have to be winners because of 2 moves, really. I thought their draft was fine. I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was terrible. It was slightly below average, I would say, but fine. I like Mozzie Smith. I think he'll be good for them. But adding Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore was great. Because I was wondering, how are they going to really add this? How are they going to add talent here? I wish they kept Dalton Schultz. He didn't go for that much. I don't know why I didn't keep him. But, Brandon Cooks should be a really good number 2, which they needed. They need another option, and getting him could be great. And Gilmore, who isn't even going to come in to be a cornerback number 1. He's going to be a cornerback number 2 with Diggs. If those guys both hit, they're a bit older, but if they both hit, this could make the Cowboys Super Bowl contenders, which I was not saying heading into this offseason. So big winners, the Dallas Cowboys. Number 5 is the Eagles. Now listen, I think you could still say the Eagles got worse this offseason, but the way I kind of view this is I don't just look at who got the most talent, right? Because the reality is if you have $100 million to spend and 5 first-round picks, you're going to get more talent than the team that has no first-round picks and only $5 million to spend. That's why I put the Dolphins on here, even though, they didn't have any, a ton of draft capital because they made the most of what they could do. The Eagles, they were going to lose some players. They had so many free agents, but they were able to keep the majority of them. I think the important ones they were really able to keep. They kept Jason Kelsey, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Darius. They keep Darius Slay, who they were going to cut but then didn't, and they kept James Bradbury as well. They lost their linebackers. That hurts. They lost C.J. Gardner Johnson. That hurts. But I think they'll be okay. And then they added, a lot of great players through the draft with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, who I think could be some other guys that I'm interested in. Kelly Ringo's another one. A lot of Georgia players they added. They added Swift. They added Penny in the running back game. This is a team that I think still is a championship contender, which there was some questions about would they be depending on how the offseason went. To me, they're big winners by not being big losers this offseason. Number 4 is the Bears, who definitely were a team that had a ton of, a ton going on, a ton of issues going into this offseason, and a ton of draft capital and cap space that they could use to kind of help that. Now, I thought that they did a great job trading away the first overall pick to get DJ Moore, who again, they needed receiver help, and there wasn't really a lot of ways they could get receiver help this season. I don't know if I love a ton of the wide receivers. There's a few I like in this draft, but kind of makes more sense to just get a player who can play, also getting some other draft capital as well. Wasn't a huge fan of the Darnell Wright selection. It's a position of need. I just thought it was a bit of a reach, but I like Tremaine Edmonds a lot. I think he's great. I think that he's underrated and will fit that scheme very well. TJ Edwards is also a good one who they, got, who I think is good. So, yeah, I mean, as a whole, I'm a fan of this, a lot, and I think the Bears did a good job this offseason. Number 3 is the Panthers. And listen, there's some other little moves we could talk about. Adam Thielen's an interesting flyer. Hayden Hurst I like, but let's be honest. It's the Bryce Young trade, who, I have both the Panthers and the Bears on this, and the reality is, it's a very real chance one of them looks back at this in a couple of years and says, wow, did we screw that up? But you got to take those chances, and getting Bryce Young completely changes how we view the Panthers. The Panthers would be kind of a mess heading into this season. Maybe not a mess, but not great either. Kind of just a very disappointing situation the Panthers would be in. Instead, they're in a spot right now where, who knows? People are talking about them as a playoff team potentially, and in the next few years, they could be a real contender, all due to the Bryce Young trade. Yes, their floor for the next couple years has now been lowered due to that trade, but their ceiling has gone way up, so they're here at 3. Number 2, the Denver Broncos, who, I think when we did, Kyle and I did we did offseason grades for every team. I think I didn't give them an A+ or anything. And some of these, if you looked at those grades, some of these are going to be a little different now as I've had more time to think about it. But I feel like this one is one that the more I think about it, the more I like, because the reality is Denver is screwed if Russell Wilson sucks. That's just the situation. They're in a terrible situation for the next several years if Russell Wilson isn't good. However, if Russell Wilson, what do you do to fix that? Well, you have Russell Wilson, make him good. And that's exactly what they've been doing, is they've been trying to put Wilson in a chance to make him, in a position to make him good. They added Sean Payton, who I think should do wonders for that team, one of the best offensive play callers of all time. They added some offensive linemen who, Sean Payton always likes to do, so that's something that could help them out a lot. So, listen, is this going to work out? I don't know. Are they looking a lot better now than they did, heading into the offseason? Absolutely. So I have them at 2. But number 1 is the simple one for me. I mean, listen, again, we can talk about some of the smaller moves if you want to. Alan Lazard, McCole Hardman. Okay, fine. They added Chuck Clark, who's now been injured, so that sucks. But, the real move was they got Aaron Rodgers. And say what you want about Aaron Rodgers, no one was talking about the Jets as a Super Bowl contender before he got there. Now we're talking about the Jets as Super Bowl contenders. It's all because of Rodgers, and if you can get a chance to get an MVP caliber quarterback, you just do it. You just make that decision and hope that the rest works out all right. It's just, you say yes and then figure out the rest later. That's what they did. It was smart, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the 7 winners of this offseason. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.